meeting for Wednesday, November 13th. This is a public notice. To access the meeting, join from a PC, iPad, iPhone, or Android device using this URL listed below. If you do not wish for your name to appear on the screen, draw the drop-down menu and click on the name to rename yourself, not be anonymous. To request to speak, use the raise hand icon on the screen. To join by phone, dial 1-669-900-6833 and enter meeting ID 826-5339-6072. If you wish to comment during the public comment portion of the agenda, press star 9 and wait to be recognized. On our agenda is our acknowledgement, once a month, but we'll move to agenda item number 1, roll call.
Thank you, Chair Moore. For the record, this meeting was called to order at 6:30 p.m. I'll now proceed with roll call. Chair Moore.
Present.
Vice Chair Wilson.
Present.
Board Member Blackby. Here. Board Member Calvita.
Here.
Member Cayetano. Here. Board Member Lethwich.
Here.
Board Member Williams. Here. Board Member Moses. Here. All are present. On behalf of the ODPA, we have Director Aguilar joining us remotely. We have Investigator Wechter, Investigator Gordon, Analyst, our Data Analyst Saeed, as well as myself, Policy Analyst Morito. On behalf of the BDD, we have Deputy Chief Captain Durbin, Captain Okies, Lieutenant Rigo, Sergeant Fleppy, Sergeant Rafferty, and Officer Tiffany. On behalf of the City Attorney's Office, at this time, unless they've snuck in, I don't see anyone currently attending, but you'll be joining us shortly. And on behalf of the City Manager's Office, we currently don't have a representative, but we're informed that they'll be arriving shortly. Chair, with that, we have a quorum.
Thank you, Jose, and thank you all for your attendance this evening and your participation. This takes us to item number 2, approval of the agenda. Is there any additions, changes, movement, or anything that we need to talk about the agenda? If not, I'm going to ask for a motion.
So second.
Excellent. That's it. We're hearing any nays. We're going to go ahead and keep it moving to agenda item number 3, public comment.
Thank you, Chair. Just as a friendly reminder, speakers are generally allotted 3 minutes, but maybe less time if there are many speakers. They may comment on any matter within the board's jurisdiction at this time, except confidential personnel matters. With that said, I'll start with those physically present before moving on to our virtual attendees. With that said, just one moment while I get the time up on the screen. As soon as our Wi-Fi cooperates. Okay, 3 minutes are on the clock.
Thank you. My name is Betsy Sagnor. And I'm concerned about what I'm seeing the department, ways in which our department is seeking to change the use of force policy. The use of force, the policy of the department, the section of the use of policy that concerns me is the use of lethal force area. My understanding about the difference between policy and law is that law is like the floor. Law is what people must do. Policy is, law is a floor to what policy can be. Policy can ask for something more from employees than what is required for law. There's a big difference between policy and law. If you disobey a policy, you won't go to jail. It's not a crime to disobey a policy. If you disobey a law, there are more serious consequences. So I'm concerned to see the changes being brought to the section on use of force that will will make it pretty much identical to what is in the law. When the current use of force policy was put in place by the PRC under the leadership of Izzy Ramsey and with the cooperation with the work of the police department, the understanding was that for Berkeley's police department, we were going to ask for something more than what is asked by the law. And that is what the city council approved. There was quite a considerable discussion of this particular section at the city council, and what we have now is what they wanted. So I am concerned to see something that would seem to have a slightly less strict consideration for that area. We know that under, California law, there have been instances in which police officers shot people and killed them when subsequent to that, it turned out that, well, that was actually a cell phone. Well, actually, they were just turning over in their sleep. And of course, mistakes can be made, but we want a policy that will try to minimize those kinds of mistakes. So I'm hoping that you will be looking at it very carefully. I don't know whether the current PAB wants to keep the policy we have in place now or wants to have a somewhat looser policy in that area, but please do look at it very carefully. Thank you.
Love it. Are there any other speakers who are physically present that would like to provide public comment? Okay, seeing none, I'll move on to our virtual attendees. At this time, if you're attending virtually by Zoom and you would like to provide public comment, please use the raise hand icon, or if you're calling in, press *9 to be recognized. Okay. One moment. And the speaker with first name Sherry, you have been granted permission to speak. 3 minutes are on the clock.
Thank you. Is this where I speak to the policy complaint that was going to be on the agenda tonight, or is that somewhere else in the meeting?
As part of the item, we will have a separate section. So if you'd like to provide public comment on that item, there will be additional time. You'll have 5 minutes during that item.
Okay, I can wait. Thank you.
Thank you. At this time, are there any additional speakers who would like to provide public comment? Chair, there are no additional hands raised.
Thank you, Jose. That will take us to agenda item number 4, approval of the minutes from the regular meeting from October 30th. Board Member Lefferts, I'm going to get to you in this situation.
It looks fine to me, so unless someone else has any concerns, I would move to approve the minutes.
Second.
Is there any names? Not seeing or hearing any, we'll go ahead and pass that item and move on to agenda item 5, discussion with and presentation by BPD. Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody, or good evening, everyone. My name is Sergeant Darren Rafferty, currently assigned to the policy and training unit. I'll be discussing automated license plate readers, their training, their policy, and their current implementation. So bear with me as I pull it up on the screen here. Sorry about that. Thank you. How's this? Is this okay? Perfect. Today, we must be like most license plates like you said this time. Those are the cameras we do plug into the emergency labor and it's what it is. It's not exact they'll travel on roadways. What this has done so far and what this is intended to do in the future is help us prevent and solve crimes. Some that are occurring in real time, others that are investigations where we're able to go back and review some of the data that we've got. What we presently get from the system is both real-time alerts of wanted vehicles. In addition to those real-time alerts that could come into us through various means, which I'll go into shortly, it also provides a database for our officers and investigators to search for full or partial license plates or a handful of other different things that I'll get to in more detail as we move forward. Specifically, though, they're able to search based on the vehicle's license plate, body type, make, model, or color, And then additionally, there's certain things that they can get off of the camera as well, or that the computer can search for, such as roof racks, bumper stickers, even whether or not it's got real plates or no plates, or not real plates, plates or no plates. The picture on the right is what the Flock system looks like, is the Flock Falcon system, this one here. It's powered by a solar panel. Of all the cameras that we've got, only 2 are actually hardwired for power, but the rest of them are powered by solar panel, and they connect to the internet via a mobile connection, a cellular connection. As I explained earlier, they take still photos of the vehicles as they drive past. It's not a continuous video recording, it's snapshots. And what the computer system does is that it attempts to pull license plates or read or optically recognize the license plates as they're captured in the photographs. It compares that then with a database that it's already downloaded via the cellular connection through NCIC and the stolen vehicle system in California, and compares that if there's an alert or if there's a match between the two. There are numerous things that we'll get into shortly that would alert our officers and our communication center that there was a wanted vehicle in town and the location that was found. In overall, you'll see a little bit of the images later on, but daytime images capture in fair detail the color, the body, the make and the model of the vehicle, as well as a good shot of the license plate. They are not focused on the driver per se. However, occasionally you might get the driver or other occupants of the vehicle, but that's not the intended purpose. It's generally to the rear, capturing the backside of the car, where you can see all the badges of what vehicle it is and things like that. In the daytime, the pictures are pretty good. At nighttime, the pictures are pretty bad. What it does, it gets a real good shot of the license plate, thanks to the reflectorized coating that's on all California license plates and many other states' license plates. And using the cameras, it gets a pretty good shot of it most of the time. In regards to the hot lists and the NCIC searching that it does and how it cross-checks it and everything there, these lists update automatically. On average, they update or they download this list from the state approximately every 4 hours. Talking about Berkeley's camera network, I wish I could make that picture bigger, better, or more beautiful or color contrasted, but I can't. So that's an actual shot of where some of our cameras are deployed presently. We've been approved for 52 automated license plate readers, 32 of which are presently installed. As I mentioned earlier, also 2 of them are hardwired, the other 30 are solar powered. In addition to that, there are some that are going to be going on major thoroughfares through town, on Ashby Avenue, on San Pablo Avenue. Those are things that we're working towards with Caltrans as we presently speak. As you'll see with the map, it's kind of sparsely situated throughout town in lots of different locations. We're not looking to saturate any particular one location, but we want to hit main intersections. We want to hit main thoroughfares, entry and exit points to and from the city, so that we can be alerted if and when a wanted vehicle will be coming into our town. That being said, there are some that are more on the inner core of the town, so that we might be able to get a heading on where those wanted vehicles might be going once they're in our city. Now, it would do me no good to be in the policy and training position and not talk about policy. So policy 422 is what governs the automated license plate readers. I'd also like to point out, I'm not sure I've done it yet, but these are fixed license plate readers. This is not capture. This is not dealing with ones that might be on other vehicles or anything like that through the town. Like to point out that it's a 30-day retention period. Now that's on the lower end. It's not on the New Hampshire low, which is only 3 minutes. But it's on the lower end of other things, 30, 60, 90 days. Some people hold up for a year in the state of California, but we hold it for 30 days. Under the policy, it's very clear that it's for official use only. So if there's a business purpose for it, it's okay that you're able to access the system. The other thing we're doing, both now and when we go live with the system throughout the department, is which we're providing training prior to the officers using the system. Additionally, we're not going to be sharing, this is one other concern in regards to federal immigration enforcement. We're not sharing our data, nor is our data allowed to be shared through the Flock system with federal law enforcement, such as Customs and Border Protection or ICE. A companion policy to 422 is policy 1305, which deals with data retention and a little bit more of the nitty-gritty in terms of the data. I'm not gonna really get into it. There's a lot of crossover between the two, and there's a lot of cross-pollination between those two policies, and they generally mirror one another. Let's talk about calls for service. There are different ways that Flock can be utilized by our patrol officers, our comm center, our detectives, and anyone that's doing these types of calls or working in investigations. First and foremost, we can get alerts, and we can get alerts through the web portal. We can get alerts on our mobile devices, or we can get them on our MDTs, which is in essence just a different way to get it through the web portal. Each user can toggle and select what they would like to get alerts for, but the options are a felony vehicle, a stolen vehicle. You could search for, or you could get alerts for custom hot lists that are generated by you or some of your coworkers. The NCMEC Amber Alert or Missing Child Alerts. So that's the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, or Amber Alerts, so nationwide. And you can also get stolen plate alerts. Most folks, to be honest with you, have shut off the stolen plate alert because on average, we're getting a lot of those. So almost over 90 of those per day. And there's additional investigation that you need to do if you would want to take any enforcement action on that, just because is it a front plate, is it a back plate? Someone maybe take their front plate and put it on the back. So there's a whole host of different things there. Most people have shut off that when they are using the system, but the felony vehicles, stolen vehicles, custom hot list, and Amber Alert or missing children alerts are what most people have it set for. We can also generate hot lists while we're working in an in-progress call. And the way that would work out is if there's a carjacking, a homicide, a violent crime, or something where we've got a good license plate, either from the caller or from the officer when they get on scene and do their initial investigation and interviews. What can be done then is, as quick as we can call up the dispatch center, we can get that entered into the Flock system. Now, earlier I'd mentioned that there's a 4-hour upload time. A 4-hour upload time, if we've got a car driving through our city, potentially passing some of these cameras, is a really long time. So that's where we've got the Berkeley hot list, where we could input a license plate into the hot list, and within 5 minutes, the camera systems around would know if the car is going to go past it. It's going to give us an alert based off of that. So 5 minutes versus 4 hours. The other way that we could get calls for services is, I mentioned the officers could have this on their MDTs or on their mobile devices. Officers could be monitoring the system a little bit more closely than the dispatch center might be, so they might generate a call for service, or because our system eventually, not now, but eventually, will likely tie in with other departments where they could search our system and they could be alerted if a vehicle pops into our town. They could then get on the phone to our comm center and request some assistance, just as if they might have officers in town as well. Flock hits and alerts, I kind of use them interchangeably, as do our officers, but a flock hit or an alert, that alone does not justify an enforcement stop. That is merely an alert letting you know that there's a little bit more work that you got to do before you make any enforcement stop. You know, reasonable suspicion or probable cause are then further need to be developed prior to an enforcement stop. We have a 2-prong test that's laid out in the policy, and it's a 2-prong thing that we need to do before we would take any enforcement action. Those being that you've got to verify the alert through either our comm center, through your MDT, or any other CLETS terminal. And you've got to visually verify once you would see the car, if you would see the car, that the plate actually matches the description, matches the license plate. And I'll show you a little bit later, the computer's not perfect. And so that's where we need to come in, and that's why we've got that test as well. To talk a little bit about the hot list function, our dispatchers and our detectives are both able to enter vehicles into the hot list. DD or our detectives more so that they could go back and do investigations, but dispatch, as I mentioned earlier, more for those in progress calls so that we could try and catch perpetrators that are in town while they're still in town. It's a rapid entry, and it's then going to need to be followed up with an entry into the stolen vehicle system as a felony vehicle, but that's something that we would do routinely already. Investigations could do it, and they're going to need to actively manage their hot lists, and keeping in mind that a hot list, again, just like an alert or anything else, does not justify enforcement action in and of itself. Reasonable suspicion and probable cause are still needed, even if it's on a hot list. Now that I've talked about alerts and that kind of real-time information that we're talking about. There's also the cold investigations or going back again for 30 days to search the data that we've collected. In that, we don't need reasonable suspicion, probable cause for searching the system because it's data that's already included or that's already captured. But what we do have are certain parameters where you've got to enter a case number or a reason why you need to be searching for that. So that's the check there. And then you can search both the license plate or a partial plate. There's ways to do that. You can search for other filters. So you could search for California license plates. You can search for out-of-state license plates, or if you know it was an Alabama license plate that came into town, you can search specifically for that Alabama license plate. You could also search based on the body, make, color, or other identifiers like I've already explained. So again, an active system, a real-time system, and then the investigation system. Some other key points about search, maybe I'm repeating myself, but I think they're important enough to mention. We do not permit the sharing of ALPR data for federal immigration enforcement with ICE or Customs and Border Protection. The other thing to point out is that on the right, you see that disclaimer, that white disclaimer, and I'm not going to ask anybody to read it, I'll read it for you, but by accepting, you're agreeing that you will not use any flock safety technology to investigate, interrogate, detain, or arrest persons for immigration enforcement purposes. Now, no matter how hard any user tries, every time you click the search button, that is going to pop up and you've got to accept it. Reminding you each and every time that you're searching that you're not going to be using it for that. Reminding everyone in the room also that, again, we're only using the system for legitimate law enforcement business, official law enforcement business, and it can be used for just routine patrol, but can also be used to support our criminal investigations looking at athletes. And to search in the system, we need to have a case number or a reason, and that's got to be listed, or you're not allowed to hit the search button. It doesn't work. Now, earlier I spoke about errors. This is a camera, this is a computer system, and it's operating really quick, really quick. Sometimes we get mismatch or misread plates, but that's where the human comes in, and that's where the human's got to double check and verify, and that's why we've got those tests that we explained earlier. So can anyone help me out? What are the first two letters in this license plate?
9E.
9E. You are smarter than the flock system, because the flock system sees that as a 9F. A 9F like Frank. And I can see why it sees it. Don't get me wrong, I see it and I understand the license plate frame or bumper stickers or just any sort. I mean, honestly, I've seen them where it's just the glare of the sun, or, you know, sometimes people will even grind things off on purpose on their license plate, but the computer reads what it reads. That's where we need to double check and verify. So that's why we've got those tests before we take any enforcement action. Additionally, some other things that have come up, and these are just normal things, and that's why we have the systems in place. There could be a 4-hour delay, as I mentioned earlier. So a vehicle that was stolen and then recovered and now driving to its home with its rightful owner might still alert for a little bit. So that's why we've got to double check and verify. We could get the alert, but the stolen vehicle system would let us know that that's already been removed. So there's that. And that's why, again, that's why we always do it before making enforcement stuff. As I said, I'm not going to gloss over the training. We've already done some in-house training for a select group of folks, our detectives, sergeants, and heavy users that are giving excellent feedback and helping us hone the training further before we roll it out department-wide. That's followed up by self-paced alert certification and search certification that all of our officers are being encouraged to get through the flock system. It's a series of videos followed up by a quiz and some testing that helps them learn how to use the system and leverage it so that they can do it and do it more properly. That's all I've got in terms of that. I'm happy to entertain any questions.
I've got a question. So you mentioned earlier that the system should only be used for legitimate searches, correct?
Yes.
What would be, can you give an example of like an illegitimate search or something that's not legitimate that the officer tries to use the system for?
Well, I can come up with a lot, but in essence, we want to look for our personal vehicles to see, is my car around here? Now, that would be one that would be an improper usage to search for your own. And I'm not speaking specifically of any officers or anything that would do this here that I'm aware of, but there's a lot of information to search for, and that's why there's heavy accountability. There's heavy accountability, auditing, reviewing, and seeing what people are searching for and why.
So there is auditing in process to review. the search
Absolutely.
data.
Absolutely, and we're also in development for spinning up a transparency hub as well, so we can share a little bit more data about what we're doing. So that's in development presently.
Board Member Leonard.
If I could, Councilmember Lethbridge, go.
Yes.
I'm sorry, Board Member Lethbridge.
Thank you so much. This is super helpful and informative. I had a couple of questions though. So you were saying that officers can set kind of like filters? And I just wanted some clarification. You said that you're getting like 90 stolen vehicles a day, so that's shut off. So I wasn't clear what, that was the
Sure.
first thing. I just wasn't
Sure,
understanding.
I'd be happy to clarify. So in regards to what can be toggled on or off, it's literally that simple. Do you want to be alerted for stolen vehicles? Do you want to be alerted for missing and exploited children vehicles or Amber Alert vehicles? And in essence, what we're at right now. I have the
But
numbers.
each officer on his or her own can.
User-defined settings, yes, on their webpage or on the webpage where they log in, because this is also I log in to a system that tracks what I do on the system as Lieutenant Rago or Captain Oakey as your Deputy Chief Agent would. We all have our own individual logins, so any activity that I do on the system is logged to me. Just like I can also make the settings appropriate to me.
But so there's no minimum, I guess I'm still not quite understanding. So if I'm on patrol. I get, so I mean, it seems to me like if there's a Amber Alert or carjacking or some felony in progress or something. I guess I'm kind of surprised that someone can just say, I don't want those alerts. But again, I don't really understand how the system.
Right, so this is intended for patrol officers as well as investigators, and perhaps if you're working in an office, you wouldn't want to be alerted. If there's a felony vehicle, you might only be interested in what your hot list or what cars or vehicles that you're investigating would be. It can be quite a bit, and it can be, if you've got the system up, again, that's why I shut off license plates, because it was almost 90 a day. And so I didn't want to constantly be getting that alert for that.
Is there a default patrol setting?
No, but what we're training is that it might be best to shut off the license plates unless that's something that you really want to get into. Because again, specifically with license plates, there's more investigation that would need to take place prior to doing any enforcement stuff.
Can I ask you about the certifications?
Yes,
You said there's an alert and a search certification that officers can do on their own time to, I guess, get more comfortable with the system. Does that make, does these certifications, does that allow us to have maybe a better liability? Is there an insurance component to this? Does this help us in any way? The more certifications we have, is there anything that wants the department to move in that way to certify more officers with this system?
I think the better trained we are, especially when it comes to courtroom testimony, the better we're able to be, just the way we're doing business. The more trained we have, the more certified we are in regards to the tools that we use on a routine basis. I don't see how there's a loss there. In terms of insurance or anything, I don't know of any insurance policy or anything like that, but yeah.
Do we have an insurance policy that's attached to the system?
As part of the contract, there's no insurance when we're working with vendors.
Member Calvino.
Thank you for this. It's really helpful to see these details, and I'm really happy to learn about these. It's not the filters, but the protections against erroneous hits. And so I'm wondering, you know, when we studied this as a body, the research showed that 10% of hits across the state, this is before we had the system, ended up being erroneous. And I'm wondering, like, is that because they didn't have the kinds of protections that we're building into the system? Or you mentioned reasonable suspicion and probable cause, but, you know, I would think reasonable suspicion would be almost automatic if there's a hit. So how do you have to establish probable cause before you begin law enforcement on the hit?
So the way that we're working with the policy is that you've got to have, or you've got to get to the reasonable suspicion probable cause. By checking the license plate in a state-based or state database and visually inspecting the plate against what the hit is, that's going to prevent from us getting false hits. We don't want to do that. We don't want to stop a wrong car or a wrong plate.
Right.
Again, 10% doesn't surprise me, to be honest with you, that they might, wherever that number comes from.
Given that people shift license plates around and so.
Well, no, it's a misread, or it's a misunderstanding of what the computer sees. But it's not reaching out and checking to see if the license plate matches what the state database should be. It's not doing that. It's just merely checking to see if the license plate that's in front of the camera is a wanted or stolen license plate, which is its own separate database. There's no data that's tells me who the registered owner is, for instance, using the system.
Follow-up question, how long have these been in effect in Berkeley now?
So we started a pilot program in regards to this, kind of a soft rollout to make sure that we got the policies right and the training and everything right. And we started doing that in October.
Have we had any, I know that we've found some stolen cars and such, have we had any hits that were mistakes?
Like alerts that were
Or
mistakes?
law enforcement that were mistakes?
We're not pulling over the wrong cars, if that's what you're asking.
No.
That's why we have that test that I was explaining where you run it and then you visually verify, and then you're also verifying it visually against what the system shows.
One other very quick question. You mentioned it can't be used for federal law enforcement with regard to immigration. Some of us were concerned about state law enforcement or sharing with other states that have, for example, laws prohibiting certain reproductive rights of women. Texas being one nearby. Do we have anything that bars sharing with other states?
Well, we are in control 100% of who we share with
Do we have a policy that talks about that?
in regards to sharing
In regards
outside
to
the state of California
No,
or the
in regards
reproductive
to
banks.
specifically abortion and reproductive rights.
Not that I'm aware of right now.
Mhm.
That's a developing thing that we're, you see it popping up in a lot of different, in a lot of different ways.
Right. Yeah. Thank you.
Hi, thanks for your presentation. So my understanding is that this ALPR Regular is a pilot program for the year. And that at the end of the year, you're required to report on the efficiency and using different metrics. So what metrics or measures is the department using to judge the ALPR system and its effectiveness? I think that I asked the Chief Lewis, about this last month. And she said that she would look into it. So I'm curious what internal measurements and if we have or if we're able to work with you on that as well.
Okay, well, what the system does offer is that there's a way to edit outcomes. So for every hit that we would get, there's a list of things that we could hit. As it's kind of a simple drop-down menu. Was there an arrest? Was the vehicle located? Was a lead generated? Or was it, if you search for it, you can find it? Or was there an error? All these things are being managed by the users presently. It's gonna need to continue to be that way so that we can have the metrics to report back on. That's what's being trained as well. And there, it's pretty simple. I mean, there's even to the point where how many arrests were involved, how many guns were recovered, things like that are also part of the data capture and the editing of the outcomes.
Yeah, I think I'm, that's good. I think I'm more interested in like a systemic understanding of how the ALPR is affecting, for example, the staffing and patrol levels within Berkeley, because theoretically you get more flock hits, you have more awareness of what's going on in your city, you have more need to respond. That need might be dispersed in different parts of the city. So you have that part, and you also have the part about clearance rates, about how it affects clearance rates in the city, because part of the flock system is designed to solve, crimes that have happened within Berkeley. So I think that those two metrics are ones that I'm interested in. And if your department has the ability to track that, I think that I'm going to keep following up on that. Yeah.
Right. I totally understand and agree with what you're saying. I think it's important, and this is something that has been drilled in the training and on a routine basis popping into the detective division, because those were some of the first officers that were trained. Leads generated to me a positive outcome because they're able to go back and they're able to work with the system to generate leads and cases. warrant generated, arrest generated, your search warrants generated is also a good metric. So that's something that is able to be captured in the system.
I'll echo the first for this presentation. I'm curious when you share our a number like 90 black for stolen vehicles a day. And that we are in essence trying to.
If I may clarify, stolen plates.
Stolen plates. Thank you.
Far lower numbers on the others.
Far lower numbers.
Stolen plates are very high. That's why.
Right. But that is sort of the first filter that we're putting on to have more important noise, more important signal identified by this. I'm curious, sort of more broadly, how much do they expect this to change the way that our patrol officers are operating in day? In other words, my experience is that again, for the one right I want to sort of correct me, but that was not an accurate experience, but that there is a fair amount of responses to calls from dispatch, and less to things happening in front of the officer. Crimes that they are investigating in front of the patrol officer. Whereas this is going to, in theory, bring those active crimes much more to the forefront of our patrol officers. So I'm curious, do we have how much is this going to change the way that officers are operating in their shift?
I think it's safe to say that it's too soon to say.
Okay.
Yeah.
We expect something.
Right, and I can say that just with a very quick search prior to coming here in the last month, in 6 cases, we've arrested 8 people. And the majority of those are stolen vehicles. So far, within the past month, with the pilot and a limited number of people using it, I can't say that it's had a huge impact. And to board member Caetano's question, some of the metrics that we're going to be using will be in order to gauge effectiveness is case closures with and without the use of lock and how that looks. And then also the qualitative data on investigative effectiveness. So those are just some of the things that we're looking at. And part of the training is once you've had a hit to go in, if you've actually engaged the vehicle or found the vehicle, to close it out with some very detailed information that we can query so that we have a more informed idea of what's going on.
Great. So we'll come back to that. I have one more question, if I may. You talked about the BPD hit list that we're able to populate.
Not use that term.
Sorry, I apologize. The hot list.
Hot list.
Thank you. The BPD hot list that we're able to populate. But the broader list is in essence, and I'm going to use another word, it strikes me very similar to a no-fly list. And I'm curious if that analogy is a accurate analogy to think of the way that the state is populating this list for the ALPR system.
The way that the state populates it?
Right. The majority of the hits are going to come from through the state database.
Correct.
Right. So so I'm curious how that database is regulated and populated to ensure.
Yes.
Yeah. So that's the state vehicle stolen vehicle system. And that's managed by every department. Everybody can upload their vehicles into it. And it's a very formalized process whereby if you have a stolen vehicle or if there's a vehicle that's wanted or involved in a felony crime, you can take that vehicle's license plate, make, model, registered owner, a lot of detail, and you can upload it into the system as wanted or a stolen vehicle. So
that's the only inroad into this. That's the primary way that licenses are added to this list?
That's, as far as I can think, the only way that the license plates get added.
So those would be like, carjacking vehicle and things like that. Any local agency can make that entry into the stolen fuel system. But as Sergeant Rafferty was explaining, that can take hours to upload. So this is a means for us locally to be able to add that in and get that information to our folks.
It helps us have a more rapid response and use the tools intelligently to try and find the right folks.
We're on the left, which, you guys are doing great. We're almost landing this plane. If you can bear with us.
But this is also new and it's also important. So I know you said that a flock alert alone is not enough to justify enforcement. You need probable cause and reasonable suspicion. You also mentioned policy 422 and 1305. And I think we had discussed during our vehicle pursuits meetings, we had discussed what these policies cover. And I haven't looked at them, but I thought at the time you said that they're more about the technology. And my understanding was that it didn't get into the issues of probable cause and reasonable suspicion. And so I'm wondering, is there, it seems like it'd be nice to connect the dots specifically to the ALPR system, so that it isn't just technology and then elsewhere in policy to talk about probable cause. So am I,
I'm sorry.
no, am I understanding that correctly? Because it seems like it'd be helpful to have ALPR specific protocols and policies.
So the reasonable suspicion and probable cause are directly called out in policy 422. I can't tell you the exact paragraph because it's kind of dense. But if you give me a couple minutes, I'm happy to take a look, but it is in my specific.
Oh, it is. Okay.
It actually does 422.5 under operations. Will tell you a lot about what we have to do in order to take enforcement action.
Oh, okay. Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
And then I got a quick question, more about, procedure and, practice than policy, but I'm sure you guys have developed a policy about it. I'm just asking because you're here. I'm familiar a little bit with flock fishing. Do you guys know what I'm talking about? Where an officer would wait and stay by a camera or stay in a logistically, I guess, positive space and wait for a flock hit and then go and, find the vehicle, and that would be the policing. Are you not familiar with this? I heard about this somewhere, somehow. That's why I'm bringing it to you. Do we have a policy against this? Is this something that if you've never heard about it, I guess not. Is there?
I can tell you, I've never heard of it, and I know we don't have a policy of directly addressing that.
Do you think we should? Do you think this is something we'd have to worry about, or? I'm asking.
I have no idea. I've never heard of the term before.
Okay.
Quick question. So you mentioned the number of hits on, I'm sorry.
Sorry. I'm thinking through this and I'm thinking if you have an ALPR hit and the officer is required to develop reasonable suspicion or probable cause to stop the vehicle, but they just happen to be in a location that is close to a camera to apprehend the vehicle that has alerted. I guess my question would be, would we not want the officer, and this is open to the group, would we not want the officer to take enforcement action on a vehicle that just hit and we confirm the plate and that is a carjacking vehicle and they just happen to be in the area?
I think the converse of that would be if an officer was just waiting and their policing was waiting for ALPR hits. And that was, the focal point of that police officer's, 8 hours or 12-hour shift is sitting there and waiting to, and if we have officers just on the borders, waiting to get flock hits, I don't know if that's the best use of our time or energy or effort. I don't know. I just know that this is something that I heard about. It was a concern, something we had learned about through the research. So I wanted to bring it to you and say, maybe this is, the way that we want to use flock cameras. But, I thought I should bring it up and say, hey, is this, how we would operate? Is this okay? Is there any issues with that? You guys tell me. I don't know.
Thank you.
And I mean, it's related. So you talk about the 90 stolen plates hits that you're getting a day. How many are you getting on the other metrics on a daily basis?
It depends on the week,
Yeah.
but on average, 1 or 2 felony vehicles a week at most,
Right.
on average.
Which answers your question, which is like, there's just not that much
Exactly.
to be, right?
That's great.
On average, 5 to 10 stolen vehicles, depending on the day. It could be 3, it could be 2, it could be 5, depending on the day.
And this from a process perspective, do you think, is it more efficient for that to come to someone dispatch and have it routed? Or is it more efficient for everyone who's out on patrol, have access to all that data all the time? I'm just wondering, like, in terms of the efficiency of how you would direct people to those calls? Or is there a geographic distribution? So if I'm on a beat in North Berkeley, I shouldn't be getting the hits in South or whatever. I mean, is there a way, like, because I'm just thinking, should every officer who's on patrol be getting all the alerts all the time? That also seems like could be information overload in a way that I don't need all these. And I know you can opt in but can you opt in regionally? Or is it also more efficient at some point for dispatch, somebody centrally to be getting these and saying, hey, we need to route this out, we need to check down, as opposed to going directly to somebody in the field?
Right, that's presently what the protocols are, is that if there's a vehicle that rises to a certain level, our dispatch center will put it
So it
down.
goes through dispatch first. Yeah.
Yes, however, it's not fully implemented in dispatch yet, so that's what it's going to be.
Okay. That makes more sense than everyone out on the beat having access to all this data. It feels like it's more efficient for it to go somewhere and then be routed.
Well, as you mentioned earlier about information overload, for some, this is just another blip on the phone and they're used to it.
Yeah.
For others,
Okay.
it could be a bit much from time to time,
Well, that's the next one I'll ask is,
so.
are all the neighboring jurisdictions using LPRs, El Cerrito, Oakland, Emeryville? And what's the coordination look like between like when things cross borders? So, and does the training also encompass that?
I know that many of those cities do, but you mentioned in regards to the collaboration, that's where we're gonna be working towards sharing agreements with other jurisdictions. And that's got its own protocols and procedures as well. And again, we're in control of choosing who we share with. And that's the way that we're doing that. So that's in development as well.
Thank you.
Board Member Moses and Board Member, or Vice Chair Wilson, anybody else? Yeah.
The volume answered my question.
I just need to clarify, how long is this? How long is the pilot period?
It's 2 years.
From October? Okay, and then are you saying that the, like, success criteria for determination of the effectiveness of the pilot have not yet been established by the department or the city or the council? Like, how, after 2 years, what are you gonna look at to say, yes, this has been successful, it's worth the cost? Have those measures been identified? I can't quite tell. I hear that we can collect a lot of data, but have the criteria been established yet?
I think that goes to what I was saying about, so basically, Arlo Melberg is gonna be taking a look at all of the data and going through the Excel spreadsheet and figuring out how many stolen vehicles we've recovered, how many carjacking vehicles recovered, how many of our cases are closed based on ALPR versus not, what the investigative benefit is for our detectives and things of that nature. When I get into the chief's report, there are several things that I want to share. And I don't want to spoil it now, but related to the ALPR.
Okay.
So I would say the short answer is yes, and I think it's going to go through a process of refining as we learn more about the system and use it.
Okay. It's just kind of difficult from like a transparency and accountability perspective for us or the public or even your own members of the department or the council to really hold this effort accountable if we don't really know what the success metrics are and they could be changing. I mean, I understand why, but that's just feedback I have. It would be useful to say, yes, it's gonna be 6 things, and we might add some, but we're committed to assessing it on these 6 things. But anyway, I appreciate the answer. Thanks.
Thank you. We good?
That's good. Now we're good. It's working now.
Okay. So I don't think there's any other questions. I appreciate you taking the time, so Rafferty and Chief Tate and everyone to come down and give us the explanations and really clarify all the questions we had. I appreciate that. If there's not anything else, everybody's good. We're gonna say we're done with that. And we can move to agenda item 5B. Discussion and action on the annual review of the use of force policy to reflect developing practices and procedures per SB 230 and BPD policy 300.13, policy review and updates. I'm going to pass it to the director.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the board, colleagues, and members of the public. I just want to give a brief overview of how we got here. The policy, BPD policy 300, specifically 300.13, has a provision called policy review and updates. And it states that at least annually, the Berkeley Police Department and the PAB shall convene to review and update the use of force policy to reflect development practices and procedures per SB 230. So earlier this year at the retreat, the Police Accountability Board entrusted the initial review of the use of force policy onto the office, and throughout the following months after the retreat, we conducted our internal review. We had community forums where we talked about different topics on use of force. We talked about de-escalation and proportionality, accountability and transparency, and building and maintaining community trust. I'll be honest, they weren't as well attended as we envisioned them, but they did provide some feedback to us in this process. We wrote up a report that we presented to the board last month. The report has been shared with the police department, and we made several observations and several recommendations that the PAB and the police department could consider as they do this annual meeting. We also note and recognize that we're in November, so we have a month and a half before the new year. So I'm not sure that that's what is necessarily envisioned under this annual review in terms of being able to do any meaningful updates, given the year's upcoming. And I did talk to Deputy Chief Tate. She did indicate that there's some upcoming legislative updates in the beginning of January. But nevertheless, I think that having this meeting, as the policy requires, is an important step to make sure that we're following with the best practices on use of force. I do want to highlight again some of the recommendations we made in our report. We indicated that the department and the PAB should consider codifying the principles of ABLE into the use of force policy, amending policy 300 to include specific guidelines on the display and use of less lethal munitions to prevent escalation during peaceful protests, and clarify the distinction between less lethal tools and firearms. This was something that when we brought it forth, Lieutenant Montgomery indicated that in practice is something that's already done. So I don't know that that would be a controversial policy update. We also noted that there should be some discussion and consideration on integrating the officer created jeopardy doctrine into training and policy to address pre-incident behaviors that can create unnecessary risk for both the officers and community members. We noted that there should be coordination with the specialized care unit to ensure mental health professionals lead nonviolent interventions, and thereby minimizing police involvement in situations that do not require force. And we also noted at the time we had the opportunity to review the workload organization study. So we noted that there should be a balancing on the use of force reporting, as highlighted by that report, but still ensure that there are reporting structures that continue to prioritize transparency and public trust. So that gentle overview, I think hopefully sets the stage for this conversation, and I'll turn it over to whoever from the department is going to speak on this.
I'm so sorry, I just got a message. Can you repeat the question?
Yes, I was going to just turn it over now for somebody in the department who's going to speak on this topic and or the report and or anything that regarding the recommendations, just so we have this annual convening on this use of force.
I appreciate that, and my apologies. In my conversation with you, Director Aguilar, it was my understanding that we were coming here more or less just to have a listening session and hear the feedback and the policy recommendations, and that we would take all of these things into consideration as we take on the legislative updates in January, and then come together and do more of a policy subcommittee where we take the time to go through and share ideas and collaborate on any proposed changes.
Yes, I think I'm in alignment with that. I was just giving you the opportunity if you wanted to speak on any elements of the report so far. If the board members, I know we had our conversation last month, if they want to provide any particular feedback regarding that report or anything about use of force so the department considers it, this would be the opportunity to do so.
Director, I thought, I didn't hear you mention it in your presentation just now, but I thought there was some discussion about the level 1 use of force and whether or not reports should be required for level 1 use of force. And I thought that some of us expressed interest in hearing from the department or actually seeing the kinds of reports that you all have to do subsequent to a level 1 use of force. And there was some, I think it was in the city gate analysis, they suggested the possibility of not having to report on that level. And we were interested in knowing what that report looks like, and seemed on the surface like a good idea, but we weren't clear on how extensive that report is and how time consuming it is. And I think some of us were interested in seeing what has to be done. And some of us, I think, were amenable to that idea, but not knowing exactly what that report looks like.
We would be happy to queue that up for you at another meeting where we can go through, you know, and spend some time taking you through the process and what that looks like.
Yeah, because the level 1 is really very, basically any encounter would entail practically level 1. I think issuing commands, if I'm not mistaken, is part of it. Is that
a little more than that?
Yeah. And I, for one, would be interested in including handcuffing in that level, because I think having witnessed handcuffing, not obviously as you all do all the time, but it seemed to be more of a use of force than some of the things that are included in a level 1, but that I wouldn't want to have officers spend too much time reporting on every time they handcuff, if that's an extensive use of time. So, yeah.
Any other thoughts to share?
If I may, Chair, just to piggyback on that comment, Deputy Chief Tate, I know that department has provided the presentation, we did the city gate presentation, went before council. At that time, I believe the chief indicated some of the recommendations are still being processed. Is this particular recommendation one that's actively being looked at, or did the police department already make a determination about where they're going to go with that use of force reporting?
This is something that we're considering. We haven't made any decisions around it. And so it like the other recommendations is something that we're looking at prioritizing.
Okay. So since we're gonna go ahead and have more conversations in the new year about this, we can leave this where it is. I wanna make sure everyone does get a chance to look at staff's reporting on this and the information that we've been provided. So in the new year, we can come back to this with a fresh eyes, fresh start, and get this taken care of. And that being said, that will take us to agenda item number 6, ODPA staff reports.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, and again, I apologize for being remote today. I would like to be in person. This very well attended meeting that we have today. Just as a gentle update, I am participating with Post on one of their learning domains. This is the last trip that I'll be making here to Carlsbad. I think it's going to come out with a really neat project that I'm excited about, so willing to share that as soon as it's available with the department and community members. I really appreciate the intentionality behind the project, so I think it's going to be an important project. I made our office made the announcement that at the last meeting that we were transitioning to the new space in stages. We have moved the majority, if not all, of our furniture or existing furniture and belongings to the new office location. We're still not open to the public. We have temporary ways to make contact or meet with members of the public in the other city buildings, but we want to start having board members visit the new space, and we do anticipate it being available by the next board meeting, and we're going to discuss that agenda item later today regarding our request there. We haven't had any reports or letters to council since the last meeting. We shared with the board a training that was just released by the U.S. Department of Justice COPS, or Community Oriented Policing Services Office. It's titled Vehicular Pursuit Management, Balancing Risk and Enhancing Safety. It's just a timely training given the current conversation about vehicle pursuits. And we'll also post it on our minutes to make sure that community members also have access to it. It is a free training. You just have to register, and it's a 3-hour training, and it covers a lot of the relevant topics, I think, that have been part of this discussion and the boards and the police department's review on this vehicle pursuit policy. I want to stop here and I'll give our investigator, Jason Wechter, an opportunity to just update us with any NACO news.
Yes, thank you. So there will be a NACO webinar on the importance of a discipline matrix in policing and civilian oversight. This will be next Tuesday, November 19th at 1 p.m. Eastern Time, 10 a.m. Pacific Time. The registration deadline is Monday, November 18th at 10 a.m. Pacific Time. Heather Cook, Assistant General Counsel and Deputy Chief of Investigations for the New York City Civilian Complaint Review Board, and Dr. Richard Rosenthal, the first independent monitor for the City and County of Denver, will discuss their experiences in creating and sustaining discipline matrices in New York City and Denver, and provide guidance on best practices for creating and implementing discipline matrices to improve police behavior and culture going into the future. And there are more details on this on the NACO website. That's nacole.org. There will be one final NACO webinar this year on December 10th at 10 a.m. Pacific Time on Firearms 201. It's a follow-up to the Firearms 101 webinar that we had last year.
Thank you. I do see, I believe, Mr. Brown there, or would like to yield some time to see if we have any city manager updates or news you want to share.
Thank you. It was good to be with you all. Last time I think was at NACO in Tucson. It was a fantastic conference, and we made a connection with an organization, Just Counts, that will be hosting this coming November 20th. And they offer a pretty interesting approach to compiling aggregate data on public safety within police action. And there are some areas that will allow contracting without the initial sharing of data so that we could actually determine whether this is good for the city of Berkeley or not. We'll continue to have some conversations about that. And if you all find that it's something that you might want to know some more about, I'd be happy to report back later.
Thank you.
Oh, okay, City of Berkeley Diversity, Equity, Inclusion Officer Rex Brown, good to be here. Thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Anything else, Director?
Not on my end, but I'm willing to take any questions board members may have for me or for the office.
Let me go ahead and open that up to the board. Anybody have any questions? Now is the time.
This isn't a question, but Director, I believe you're going to be participating in the conference that's going on now over in San Francisco, the American Society of Criminology, which has thousands of people over there now. And I think you're on a roundtable talking about civilian oversight. Am I correct?
Yes, we put together a roundtable with some local colleagues. We got the commissioner from the city of Richmond, Carmen Martinez, and we have our colleague, Director Paul Henderson from the San Francisco Department of Police Accountability. So the roundtables, as you know, Board Member Calvita, could be a little informal in the ASC setting, but they're a good opportunity to engage with colleagues and community members that attend that on a very important topic. So in my experience going to ASC, I have seen a growing interest in civilian oversight, but I haven't seen these kind of roundtable discussions. So we're hoping that we share our experiences from our respective jurisdictions and get some input from the different community members and practitioners and colleagues that will be present there.
Anyone else? Director, it looks like this is a light meeting for you. We are good, and at this moment, I'm gonna move us to agenda item number 7, which is Chair of Board Member Reports. Again, I will be very brief. I have only a quick announcement, and it's really one of congratulations as one of our board members is ascending to city council. I would like to extend not only my congratulations, but now that I know someone in power, that I'm gonna make sure the board has ears in high places. So I just wanted to extend my congratulations.
Thank you, Chair.
It's very, very good to see one of us make it to the big time. I love it. I love it. That being said, that's all I have to report, but I'm gonna open it up if anyone else would like to say something. Remember Cantano?
I also want to say congratulations to future Councilmember Blackaby. Congratulations. Also, I'd like to, I guess, announce that I passed the California bar. And I'll be swearing in December so that Board Member Wilson, don't have to pay the annual fee for but I will be a full-fledged attorney at that point, but I can't provide anyone legal advice. So, thank you all for your support.
Congratulations.
My own point of personal privilege, thank you. It's populating, why is this my phone? I just want to appreciate the service and the opportunity to work with each of you. I've enjoyed the experience a lot. I've learned a ton. I guess I'm swapping 3-hour Wednesday night meetings for 6 hours. I don't know if that's an upgrade or not. But I will work with Councilmember Humbert, hopefully to get someone appointed as soon as possible. Given I know that having a full complement of board members is a burden here, and so hopefully you won't miss a beat. As Chip said, hopefully, I want to be an ally and advocate for the work of the board on the council. So anything that I can do to be helpful, please Stay in touch, door will be open, and I expect to hear from all of you frequently. I look forward to following your work, and again, so thank you. And I really enjoyed the experience and look forward to being in touch. And
Is this your last meeting?
the last meeting is we start early in December.
It's
So
crazy.
it's very fast. Yeah, no, this is great. So anyway, yeah, thank you. Thank you, Chip, and thank you to the staff. Thank you to Hansel as well. Because it's been such a great experience. Thank you to VPD. I'll be doing another ride along hopefully soon. It's my first one. So, anyway, thank you.
And we'll miss you.
We sure will, we definitely will. Is there any other, board members who'd like to speak at this time? Any other announcements, any well wishes? If not, I'm gonna move along to agenda item number 8, and that is chief of police report, and
Awesome, thank you. So I had talked last meeting about the gunfire in South Campus and had said that I would have an update hopefully at our next meeting, which here we are. And I'm happy to say that we were able to use the ALPR, and our detectives were able to develop leads to a suspect who was actually apprehended, at his home in San Francisco without incident on the 7th of this month. So our SWAT team went out, or shall I say, special response team went out and made contact with him there. He was a 45-year-old individual, and he was ultimately arrested for, suspicion of assault on a person with a firearm because there was someone who was nearly struck by one of those stray bullets, discharging a firearm in an occupied building, discharging a firearm in a negligent manner, and then other weapons related offenses. And there were a bunch, I don't know if you guys saw it on our Instagram page, bunch of handguns that were recovered in that incident. So that was something that was a success story for the ALPR for all intents and purposes. Also on the 10th, we were alerted to a stolen vehicle, also through a flock, and the officer was able to find that vehicle. It hit at Telegraph and Woolsey, and they ultimately located the occupied stolen vehicle in front of it was in the 2500 block of Telegraph, and the officers were able to take that individual into custody and recover the vehicle. And then again on the 13th, we had another hit, and it was a stolen van, and that sort of went through South Berkeley into just over the border into Oakland, and an officer was able to locate that vehicle. It was unoccupied, but there was a bunch of stolen property located inside of it, and that investigation is still ongoing. So 3 success stories in a pretty short amount of time connected to our ALPR. And then I had shared that just briefly looking, we had in 6 incidents, we had 8 arrests related to just within the last month, at least with our ALPR system. This past week, members of our department conducted 3 retail abatement operations, focusing on some of the businesses that are frequently hit by retail theft. And in those 3 operations, it led to over 20 arrests and about $4,000 in stolen property that was recovered. And there were 7 on the 8th, 7 arrests on the 9th, and then 10 on the 12th. So that's just in this past week. And for community engagement department events, tomorrow I wanted to point out that our traffic bureau is going to be conducting a Drive Safer, Drive Longer educational campaign. And that's actually going to be here at 10 o'clock. The program focuses on enhancing the safety of older drivers, and they provide education and resources. It came from the TREADS, I forget what the acronym is, but in short, they provide information to healthcare, law enforcement, and the community, and it works to address age-related factors that can impact driving abilities, like vision changes, decreased motor function, and other cognitive impairments. And by doing this and offering the training, we hope to help older adults maintain their driving skills and safety on the road. So I'll be here tomorrow. We have our final draft of the pursuit policy after a lot of collaboration with our pursuit policy subcommittee. So thank you for all the work on that. I think that we've made some pretty agreeable changes to that, and we look forward to continuing along with any other updates that we might have. And we anticipate starting that training with our folks over the course of the next month to make sure that everyone's aware of those changes. We anticipate our EIS vendor will be selected by next week, if not this week. And we just received a $255,000 Officer Traffic Safety Step Grant for the benefit education and traffic safety enforcement throughout the city. And then I'm very happy to report that we are in the early stages of beginning our 30 by 30 pledge to have 30% female officers in the department by 2030. So this pledge means that our agency will improve representation and experiences of women sworn in all ranks of the department. So that's a pretty big deal. That's all I have.
Can I open it up for questions? And that's on board member Leverage. Then we're gonna go ahead to board member Bagley and board member Moses.
Yeah, regarding the vehicle pursuit policy, I just wanted to thank you for all the great collaboration that we've had together. You mentioned that the training will happen over the next month. As you know, our board's review process is triggered, 60-day review time period is triggered once the policy is implemented. I know the policy now is, you sent it to the city attorney's office. Do you have a sense of when it's going to be implemented?
Our hope is in the next few weeks, but we're not going to push something out that we haven't had the ability to train our folks on first. So I would say over the course of the next month, I will absolutely reach out to you and let you know once we've made it live in KMS.
Obviously, no rush on our part, especially given the upcoming holidays, the fact that we aren't going to be meeting.
Can I follow up on that? So is your interpretation that implementation is following training and then there's the implementation?
So we haven't really talked about the rollout yet, and there are certain things in the pursuit policy that will be changes to what we're currently doing. So we need to make sure that we've at least talked through those changes before we make the policy live.
Right, okay, so that, I mean, just thinking about our end and our charter requirements, implementation is the word that is used in the charter, so we have to mark that, have a shared understanding.
Understood.
But yeah, thank you.
It's okay if you don't have this answer right now, but I know that we had talked, I think, at the beginning of the year about the trends in retail theft, and you mentioned some of the wins and targeted work there. I'm curious if we've seen a change in those trends in either direction.
I would be happy to come back to you on that. Yeah.
Thank you.
I just wanted to echo, board member Lethbridge, thanks, to working with us on the vehicle pursuit policy. We'll have a little bit of an update during our subcommittee report, I guess, but, I think that we've established, good cadence with our subcommittee meetings, so just thank you on that.
Any other questions? I'm not seeing or hearing any. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
That takes us to agenda item number 9, subcommittee reports. Let's fly through these.
Thank you, Chair. I'll start off with the regulation subcommittee.
So we finally have a meeting scheduled for a week from today. And it'll be our first session actually with the BPA. So, yeah. That's on the books.
Fair and impartial policing, I don't believe there's an update. Okay, surveillance technology policy, okay. Policies and practices relating to the downtown task force and bike unit allegations. No, don't believe there's any update. Body worn camera policy.
No, we'll resume that after the vehicle pursuit policy.
Okay. Conflict of interest.
Nope.
Okay.
That's not one that we voted to eliminate.
We were waiting, remember?
Oh.
Okay, for policy complaint 2023 PR 003.
I'm working on it for that update.
Okay. The policy review subcommittee.
Yeah, we covered that a bit just now. So we did receive the updated policy from the department today. I personally haven't had time to look at it closely, but I know Board Member Cayetano said that it looks really good and that, we're very happy that they accepted many of our recommendations. So that's a great success story. It has been sent to the city attorney. I don't know how long that review is gonna take. But then Deputy Chief Tate said that, they want to do some training, so the implementation date is a little squishy, but I'm happy to hear it's not imminent. So that'll give us more time because we will have the 60-day review period.
You know, actually, it's 30 days
30-day review.
by charter.
I think we think.
30 days after implementation.
Mhm.
Check that.
Wow.
Yeah, it's 30
I
days.
thought staff, we've been saying 60.
Yeah, I thought we've been saying 60. Yeah.
It's not
It's
that we,
for
it's not that we have
No,
30
30
days
is
to
not-
review it.
Board Member Pelley, 30 days is for notifying after they've implemented it. That's their deadline. Our deadline to review is 60 days, pretty sure.
Oh, that's what I was going to say.
So they actually don't.
They have 30 days to get it to us. We
Yes,
then have
exactly.
60 days.
Upon notification.
Right.
Can I add one thing, Board Member Lethbridge?
Yes.
So just a little background on, we talked to a lot of policy experts and we made a recommendation to the department that they accepted actually. And we can provide more, information to the board on the agenda next meeting probably. But for the 187A forms that I asked this board for us to consider, their utility was tied to them fighting us on our recommendation. And since we are now in agreement, there's no longer utility for those 187A forms because they were going to be used to inform our recommendation should it go to council, because we would need to provide evidence to council of why we were making our recommendation. And so now, the department has agreed to prospectively change their query, and sort of search management and transparency, in order for us to have a better view into the 187A forms going forward. And I think that is a good thing. So now we will be able to access those 187A forms. The data will be on the transparency hub. But we don't have a need necessarily anymore for going back and requesting those 187A records that we were missing from 2013. I think that it was really sad that we couldn't access this record, and I don't think that will be a problem going forward because the department has been committing to making these changes. So I just wanted to put that we spent a long time on that last meeting, and I think it's a very good about what we're doing.
Director?
Yes, Board Member Kaisan, just so we're clear for our purposes, are you withdrawing the request just so we can notify the department, or is it still on the table?
We don't want to formally withdraw it until the city attorney's office gets their review back, and also our subcommittee has a chance to internally confer to, officially recommend its withdrawal. So we don't want to jump the gun before there's actually ink on the paper, so to speak.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, right, that's confusing for you, but.
Can you remind me of what we're waiting on to terminate or sunset the conflict of interest subcommittee? Was it this particular?
I believe it was. We were gonna issue subpoenas, or they were issued, right? And we were wait.
We
Go ahead.
have the green light to issue these subpoenas.
But now we're saying we don't need to. Because it's a moot issue, right?
Well, we're not pulling it yet, right?
For the 187A?
Yeah.
Yeah, we're not pulling it yet. We're waiting until, like I said, the ink is dry on the policy paper.
Okay, all right.
But we should be able to dissolve.
Soon, I promise. I know you can't wait. It's coming.
And that's primarily because in the regulation subcommittee, in response to our memo pointing out that there would be a conflict of interest if we issued a subpoena to the department, who's the city attorney's office going to represent, the department or us? There's a clear conflict, and they acknowledge that, which is great. So.
No, not on this venture fund.
So presumably we should be able to dissolve the subcommittee, but we were waiting to see what happened.
I do want to say, Director one of the policy experts that we spoke with was Professor Jeff Alpert, who's a national leader in this space, and he's actually getting the Lifetime Achievement Award at the conference that you're at. So if you could thank him for us for the work that he gave to the subcommittee, because we spoke with them. Thank you.
Okay, budget and metrics.
No update other than that I'm losing my team member. So my thought is we could fold it into what Alex has been doing. Or I could get a new team member because we are not done. We do need to meet before December 1. But presumably there'll be a new BPD budget to analyze next cycle. So we don't have to decide that today, but folks can think about it.
I would love to be on the committee if I could volunteer myself, if you.
All right. Well, then maybe that's the,
There it is.
is there a vote needed on that?
Not at all.
Okay.
Not at all.
All right.
Yeah, I had one thing, maybe it should have been earlier, but I saw the city attorney this evening at an event for Councilmember Wengrath. And she told me that James Chang has left, I don't know if anybody else knew that, to go work for UC, which is unfortunate because he's been very involved in a lot of these issues with the regulations, so they're looking to hire.
That's a setback.
No.
Good to hear.
Okay, the outreach and engagement committee.
I'm on my own on this one, I guess. I'll also be looking for a new subcommittee member.
I'd love to join you on that.
Oh, look at this. See how things just work out?
Easy.
I look forward to it.
Okay. There's another important thing. The off-duty conduct committee.
No updates.
Okay, operations and processes.
We're gonna talk about some of that a little bit today.
Okay. BPD policies 1010 and 1034 review.
We're gonna get to it.
Okay. And then do our liaisons have any updates?
Only that I was told that the department has reached consensus, and I have a phone call on Friday to talk about it with them. So I have no news other than that.
Okay. Chair Moore, the policy reviews, any updates at this time?
Not at this time.
Okay, thank you. And with that, those are all of our subcommittees.
Excellent. That takes us to agenda item number 10, new business. 10A is discussion and action on new policy complaint 2024 PR 0006 in accordance with section G, policy complaints and reviews in the PAB standing rules.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Just for the board's reference and for reference of the members of the public, our preliminary, or our notice of policy complaint memo can be found on page 19 of your packet. And our recommendation is on page 22, which is ultimately that the board should accept the policy complaint and assign it to our office to carry out the initial review. As we highlight in our memo, a few policies do come up throughout what's presented by the complainant in this case. The first one is it touches on concepts of BPD policy 310, which is domestic violence, as well as BPD policy 409, crisis intervention, and 410, mental illness commitments. We did provide just a quick reasoning as to why we highlighted those specific ones with direct quotes from the complainant's form, just to sort of guide where those policies sort of came on the radar for. We do have the complainant with us, per standing rule section G. We do have to slot a public comment period. But before I do that, Director Aguilar, is there anything else that you'd like to highlight before we move on to the complainant?
No, just drawn to your attention. We appreciate the feedback we received from the board members. So if you notice this particular policy memo, it's a little formatted a little bit differently. That's thanks to our policy analyst. So this time we put out up front the purpose of the policy and the reason why we think it's related to the policy complaint. Again, this is not necessarily to restrict you, it's to guide you in your deliberations and analysis.
Okay.
I just had a question. It seems as if, the woman was handcuffed, put in the vehicle, and then she fell out of the vehicle. And I'm just wondering how it's possible if somebody's handcuffed, how they can open a car door? And was a seatbelt used? So that, just that factual.
Yeah. So we'll provide to the complainant to provide her 5 minute, and then we'll go to public comment, and then provide additional information. Is that okay?
Sure.
Okay. At this time, I'm sorry, I lost you within the attendees list. Could you raise your hand, so that I can grant you permission to speak? Okay, perfect. Thank you very much. Okay, the complainant has been allowed permission to speak. One moment while I put up the. And we hear you.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you for the time, and thank you all for your work. This has been really enlightening to see what happens in these meetings. So I'm concerned. I didn't see this. My feeling was like my biggest concern was kind of around dispatch in this situation. So my partner and I checked in with this couple, I mean, these two people. I don't know how they were related. The woman was in a lot of distress. The man was very, very calm body standing there with her, and she was flailing at him sometimes. And we approached and they said, asked if they wanted help, if they needed help in this situation. They both indicated no, they didn't. So we came back inside, back to our backyard. And a little while, just not even a couple minutes later, a neighbor came to fetch us and said, there's like 4 police cars outside. So we came out, and by the time we were out, the woman was in handcuffs, and, the officers were very respectful, and there's nothing that I would be concerned about how they were with them, except that when one of the officers present came to ask us for our witness statement, she said, in a situation that involves this, California law, I think she said, requires that one of them go to jail. So we need to figure out who. And I was just shocked first by the number of police cars and police officers, and for this not very problematic situation that really someone needed help. And instead of figuring out what kind of help was needed, the question became, which one of you is going to jail? So we just stood and watched as the officers talked to the people, and then everybody was dispersing. The man and his mother and the woman was in the police car, and they were driving away. And then we saw just a block later, she tumbled out of the police car onto the street. And so that was shocking. So we walked closer just to be a presence, I guess. And so she was just very, very distraught by this point. And we asked one of the officers, why can't a therapist be called in this situation? And he said, there's not enough time, that she's violent and she's disturbing the peace. And I was like, wow, that is just not the kind of peace I want kept in my neighborhood. And I just wonder how we can do a better job of having the person, I don't know who called for the police, but whoever did, it doesn't seem like there was enough discernment about what was actually needed in terms of response. In terms of having someone from the special crisis unit come instead of 4 police cars full of officers. So I think those are my biggest, that's kind of the story. And my biggest concern is that the conversation goes from what help is needed here to who has to go to jail. And also then you know, how it is that we can get mental health people dispatched when that's actually the issue.
Thank you.
So I'm happy to answer any questions. Yeah.
Just before we proceed to any questions from the board, the standing regulations do allow for a brief public comment period for any other members of the public. I'll now proceed to take any additional comments. Okay, at this time, are there any members of the public who are physically present or attending virtually that would like to provide public comment, particularly on this item? Okay, and we have one speaker physically present. One moment, while I start.
When you need to talk. I don't know anything about this particular incident, but I just want to stand in support of the concerns that have been expressed here about this incident. This is definitely not helpful. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Seeing no other physically present public comment, I'll now proceed to our virtual attendees. At this time, are there any members of the public attending virtually that would like to provide public comment on this item? Chair, at this time, I do not see any additional hands raised. Board members may ask questions of the complainant if there are any.
Board Member Moses.
Thank you so much for sharing this with us. I'm curious, have you, prior to this meeting, heard of the specialized care unit, and do you know the phone number for that line? I asked this more as a matter of course.
No, in fact, it was after like that, just immediately after that incident transpired. My partner and I came in and started to research, like, oh my goodness, there has to be in Berkeley a better solution. And that's when I learned about the specialized care unit, and we called them, and there was a man who answered and had been available that afternoon. So now I know about it, which I'm grateful to know about it now. Yeah.
Thank you.
My question is, more for staff. Do you view this as appropriate for a policy complaint versus a personnel complaint? And I ask that because, we don't know if there was violation of policy, right? Evidence in the behavior that the complainant saw. That's the only question I have. I certainly think we should accept it. It's a really interesting and timely set of issues for us, given how we've been talking about the SCU.
Yeah.
I really appreciate to the person that filed this complaint that you took the time to do that. That's my only question is it appropriate? I'm sure you guys discussed it.
Director Aguilar.
Yes, and thank you for the question. We did inform the complainant of the different processes, and this is the form she elected to fill out. So this could be reviewed in that manner. But whether we have an assessment about which route or track to take, I would have to say we're agnostic. I think that because it's being complainant driven, we would want to respect what the complaint would want out of this process.
Any other comments?
And I do see the complainant has raised her hand just for situational awareness.
Okay. You may proceed. We're currently muted, but I just requested that you unmute if you have a question or comment.
Thank you so much. I think that, I mean, you all know way more about all this than I do, but I didn't feel like except for, I don't know why she fell out of the car. Like that might be an issue, but to me, the officers who showed up, I think did their job according to how they understood it, and they did it respectfully. I think my concern was that they were just the wrong people to show up and made the situation much more traumatic than it needed to be. And so that seemed to be more like policy to me than personnel. But again, you all know more than I do. And I could fill out a different form if that made more sense.
Yeah, first, to the policy complaint. Thank you for bringing this to our attention. I think that you might not be aware, but we've been having this discussion now for a few months about how the department should interact with the specialized care units and how the technology should be directed. So I think out of, your policy complaint, the board should come to an official recommendation on how the department should interact with the specialized care units, which would require, a more extended understanding of their current relationship to specialized care units, and also, have best practices in this space, and also to board member Bez's point, like doing research on dispatch and calls for service and personnel and all these things. So I do think that that the board needs to do that. And I reading the recommendation that I wants the initially review is that just explain a little bit about why that was your recommendation. Like, my question be more specific. Does your habit to make that we're over right now?
Are you asking something of me? Because you're kind of garbled. I can't quite catch it.
Oh, it's not living. No, I wasn't. I was asking our director whether he would have the capacity to take your policy complaint under his wing right now.
With no specific time frame, I certainly think we can engage in some work. Realistically, though, because we do have other underways, it will take us a time to be able to bring it back. I suspect that we can do it within 6 months, but it's not, because we're still getting through the other policy reviews. It wouldn't be something that will be turned around, certainly, but not by next meeting or the next few meetings.
Well, maybe like someone from our board can liaise with your office. I know that member Bezos has been really eager on this, but to raise questions about like what the board would be interested in seeing your report. I think that would be an important component of your review if it's going to take 6 months.
I also think maybe we can get with the administrative part of the city and see if maybe Rex and Kayana can combine forces here. We can figure this out from a policy top-down kind of thing. That's something, bring you into the policy discussion if you're comfortable with.
Without respect to the specific case, policy as a whole, at large, I think perhaps that would be a good usage of our partnership. We're here for a reason.
Great.
So I think it's definitely worth exploring.
Excellent. I think we're building something here. Thank you. I sure.
I was just gonna say, as much as it pains me to recommend a subcommittee on this project, but I would be happy to liaise with the ODPA and the city to try to.
I was
put something there.
sorry, Geneva. I was gonna recommend, because we have on our agenda, I think it's next, the work plan for 2025. I think like taking on this policy complaint, I think I would like to recommend that the board assign this to ODPA staff. The bigger issue of the SCU and like the making recommendations overall about how the department should interact with the SCU, making some definitive recommendations about the phone number and be able to call 911. That could be like a project that we decide we want to prioritize as a board for 2025.
Yeah.
And it will involve lots of different things. So maybe like bifurcating that and not making a subcommittee just yet, but like figure out, okay, we're gonna take on one big initiative as a board.
Yeah.
Yep.
I think that's what I'm saying, but am I gonna do? Okay.
Can I just ask also, I know that we have a policy complaint process, policy review process. what we've seen a lot of times is that what we really do to also examine is practices. And so I would like to talk about this as a policy and practices review. Because, you know, I've looked at policy number 310, which is this domestic violence policy, I believe. And it talks about 10.4.1 that says the title of the section is if a suspect is arrested. Next section says if no arrest is made. Okay, so it's very unclear in the policy. So this is an issue for policy review, but it's also unclear how officers are putting it into practice because the policy is really squishy about whether it's required or an arrest may be made, because there's actually a subsection that says if no arrest is made. And just in general, since we are intent to look at policy and practices and procedures, I think it makes sense for us to do this as a policy and procedures review. What that means is it has implications for what staff or committee would do because I think that everybody would have to be look at not just the policies, but what was taking place here. Maybe, I don't know, why did she fall out of the car, but that's kind of idiosyncratic probably, but I think that we need to have evidence as to what took place in this particular incident in order to know what practices are being engaged in. And not as a misconduct thing, not at all, but policy and practices as a package. And I agree with Board Member Wilson that I would also vote to have the staff do a preliminary analysis of this and look at some evidence. This other thing about the dispatch number and all that, that's gonna take ages, you know, from what we heard in other presentations. I don't think that's something that we're gonna be able to do together with the city in the next 6 months. And I also think that, I mean, I've looked carefully at the current policies. There is nothing in the manual for officers about the SCU, about how to interact with the SCU. So, and I know that it's shifting because things are going to change eventually. But in the interim, there needs to be there's a policy, I forget what number it is, crisis intervention it's called, 401, I think. There needs to be something in there about how they interact with the SCU and what they do when they see a situation like this, where clearly the SCU is called for. And so.
Yeah, my question would be, if we want to do it, who's gonna do that?
Do what?
Who's gonna implement this policy? Who's gonna develop it? I think we're the ones we're waiting for here. This is a small pilot program. In order for it to be effective, and if it's something we need to pursue, we're gonna have to put some work in here. And I believe it is gonna be all hands on deck if we want this to succeed. Go ahead.
No, I think both, I'm not saying we shouldn't do that. I think we should do something more imminent first. And then also do the other thing, which will be joint with the city and the department. But I think that we could, in fact, take on this particular policy or practices review while we're waiting for this. I mean, that whole dispatch thing is.
That's what I was recommending.
That's what I'm,
It's just, yeah, I think we shouldn't get into the substance of the issue here, because right now we're just voting on whether or not we're gonna accept the policy complaint and then where to direct it. So I will make a motion that we accept the policy complaint and we assign it to OEPA.
Just for a matter of procedure, before an action is taken by the board, the BP is given an opportunity to provide any comments if they have any. Lieutenant Rigo, is there any?
I don't have any comments.
Okay.
Just to clarify my question for Lieutenant Rego. Remind me, so the SCU, but doesn't the also have some other mental health service you draw upon on some of these calls? Yeah, we have the Berkeley mobile crisis. Right, so that's the other piece of this. This is really confusing to me. It's not just BPD and SCU, there's this other bit. And
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so I drove down Solano the other day, and there was clearly something going on. There were two police cars, an SCU van, I think it was a van, and the mobile crisis bus as well. And they were all taking care of some individual in crisis, but they were all there.
Right.
Go ahead, and then let's wrap this up, because we have a motion on the floor, yes?
Yes, well, I think that, you know, your point is valid, that we don't have a policy about two systems that are in theory supposed to be independent. And, it is a non-co-response model with SCU, but they are gonna interact when the call goes to both places, if we are going through dispatch. I did wonder if we could get a little bit of clarity from Lieutenant Rigo for when the mobile crisis unit, like what is the policy for when a mobile crisis unit is engaged by CPD?
The mobile crisis is mainly through officers requesting assistance if they're on a particular call. Because they're already in the field, they have police radios, they're in our CAD system, which are available to us during certain hours of the day. So if we have a situation where there is a mental crisis situation, the officer is going to request a mobile crisis to respond to the scene and evaluate the person.
So it is in this particular case, in other words, like from a policy perspective, that is a policy question of, in this particular instance, why wasn't the mobile crisis unit engaged in the co-location rather than the SU1? But is that like, there is a policy today that dictates that, or is it more just sort of?
Well, the SCU has mostly gone through our dispatch, like you mentioned before. The officers will call a mobile crisis units. Now, they're not on duty all the time. Sometimes they're off, sometimes they go home at 11 o'clock. So it depends on what time.
Right.
It's 2 o'clock on Saturday.
Okay, are we good? Are we at least comfortable where we're leaving it? We're gonna revisit it on the work plan, but
I second Berger Wilson.
there we go. Thank you.
Are we gonna vote on it?
Yes, so on the motion to accept policy complaint 2024 PR 006, I'm gonna assign it to the ODPA. Motion by Chair Wilson and seconded by Board Member Cayetano. I'll proceed with roll call. Board Member Blakey.
Yes.
Board Member Alavia.
Yes.
Board Member Cayetano.
Yes.
Board Member Leftwich.
Yes.
Chair Moore.
Yes.
Board Member Moses.
Yes.
Vice Chair Wilson.
Yes.
And Board Member Wilson.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Excellent. And that will take us to.
Yeah, I think it's a relatively forward conversation to follow up on what weeks ago. Playbook of and different options we have in progress, looking policy reviews.
I have my own policy complaint assigned to me now, and now I'm going to present it to you guys in this section and trying to work it through this model, just as the way that it was needed to work.
So I think it's great to have a protocol like this. My concern is that I see that the policy committee does this initial evaluation and assignment recommendations. And I'm just concerned because the policy committee is already so busy on substantive policy reviews that I'm concerned about adding this additional layer of duties to the policy committee. And in the past, so this replaces the standing rule, right, that previously said how we would do it, and currently, the ODPA would take a look at, make recommendations. This is the policy, you can do this or this or this, individual board member. And so they would do the initial review. I personally thought that worked pretty well. And so it's like we'd be getting rid of that and it would all go on the policy committee. And as the chair of that committee, knowing how busy we are and how behind we are, I'm concerned about that.
I think that, one, it seems to me that the policy committee needs to get bigger. I think I said that the last time. Probably more of us need to be on that subcommittee. Because there's a lot of work to do, including required work. I think it makes sense conceptually, right? Because the idea is this thing, when what the policy committee knows what it's working on, what it kind of instantly touched few months ago, you have that, right? So then things are coming in, I think it's a very informed assessment, but it may not be feasible. So, I mean, we could change that and say, ODCA staff. It could be an ideal, like maybe we get there, probably make it bigger. I think it's the model they have a really something like what because we be working on. That's what is that I don't know if what are already not worrying policy wise. It's something we will come back during every meeting, so you know. And during the super policy, we will build them into the policy. These are big policies. It's not with Scott, but so many different things we're knocking on simultaneously. So I think everybody kind of copy what.
Yeah, I think that reality of the policy, policy made today is what is getting me I mentioned and prioritizing our such as I direction on the backlog. But I think the idea is not necessarily to add more policy review policy committee, but to basically make sure you start reading and making such a decision. This is not having been asked. This is because the go back to the on the forward. We are making that additional assignment step or not assignment as we close because we are so from the policy we are doing our It would be more like two additional numbers there. I do point one and two, and I think that could be a good way to get back to whatever full-time staff is on that system to write a report. To write a report for our privacy.
Well, we need to take a tech break real quick, get our tech together, and we will be right back. So let's give it 5. We can take bio breaks and whatnot.
Yeah, you just want us to like look at it and be like,
we think it should be.
Exactly.
Or like we.
You gotta shut up.
Audio and video is now on.
We are back in session, and we are in 10B, discussion and action on the operation and processing subcommittee, proposed PAB policy review and process. At this time, as we are adding more insight and information into this topic, I think it's best that we refrain from voting on this today and that we bring this back to council, and if we have any, or not back to council, sorry, back to our board. If there is anything that you would like to add and discuss with the subcommittee, I'd say let's bring that to them directly, and we'll be prepared to talk about this again at the next meeting.
So you want us to bring our comments to them separate from
Yes,
from the meeting?
yes,
Okay.
I think that's the best use of our time.
Yeah, and I think we can, work up a revision to the first part where ADP staff does the assignment.
Perfect. So works for everyone? Okay, that being said, we're gonna go ahead to 10C. I'm sorry, 10B, discussion and action on relocating PAB regular meetings to the ODPA's new office and meeting space at 1900. I did skip a minute. So again, 10C, discussion and action on developing the PAB's 2025 work plan in accordance with Chapter 1, Section E, development of a work plan in the city of Berkeley, Commissioners meeting. Board Member Wilson.
Okay, so this is another thing that is in this larger, as part of a larger effort that Alex and I are undertaking that has ultimately you will get a new policy manual to consider to replace the standing rules. So part of that is an outline of what our actual required work is. And so this chart, I don't know if you can share it in a way that's not sideways. This was an effort to work with the director to just outline what it is we're actually supposed to do, our mandatory activities. Remember, we started this at a retreat almost a year ago. Okay, so now we see it here. There's some proposed timeframes for doing some of these things that don't necessarily have timeframes. And I think that the thought is if this looks good to you, basically, we would take this and really turn it into a calendar. Like, this is what we expect to do when. It could be a standing attachment to our agenda so we can keep track of what we're supposed to be doing. And this is also an opportunity to discuss if we want to establish a subcommittee on mutual aid. You see it at the bottom. I don't know if it's mutual aid. Is that the one that the standing rule does require us to establish a subcommittee every year? Is it mutual aid?
It's on the next page. Oh,
Yeah, it does. To review these agreements, we obviously haven't been complying with that. I think we need to make a decision if we want to do that for next year.
I believe we asked for those. You haven't received them yet.
We received some old ones, I know, but we haven't established subcommittee. I would say, as you guys know, I think we have too many subcommittees. I don't know that this is a priority for us, but it is currently something that we are required to do that we did not do this year. And then, as I mentioned, when we talked about the policy complaint, any kind of planning process like this, work planning process, this is a good time for us to decide if there are any big initiatives that we want to take on. I don't know that this is the meeting for it again, but I think we decided not to do a retreat this year, right? Did we decide, or we're doing one that's just social? I cannot remember what we decided.
I don't think we did decide.
Oh, I thought we decided we didn't
I think we
want
decided to do it, but without the mediator.
Yes, right.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So then what we could do, if you have any feedback on this, including the proposed deadlines for things, you could send it my way, or we could discuss it now. We could plan to, at the retreat, have this in more of a calendar format and have some time on the agenda to talk about other initiatives we want to take on, which could include this broad SCU mobile crisis response team. I want to call it a morass, but whatever it is, just really digging into it.
Yeah, I think that's great, and I think this is super helpful, so thank you for doing it.
We're actually supposed to be doing a lot, and I think we are, but it feels, yeah.
So just with the mutual aid, and this is my understanding, and I know this isn't, we don't have to go deep into this, but we asked the chief for mutual aids and, memos of understanding of mutual aid, requirements and requests, and they were all old because there was new ones that they were crafting now. So, we are kind of in a pause on that until those new ones are, drafted and then submitted, and then we don't see them until afterwards, and then we get to.
Okay, but the standing rules say the board shall constitute a mutual aid subcommittee no later than the first meeting in February of each year.
Totally hear that, support you, I'm just telling you where.
Where it is, okay.
I was asked, and I was looking at the director's memo, there's sort of obviously there's the mandatory and then there's the permissive. And he at least, Council, I think you had said including review of mutual aid agreements is in the permissive duties as opposed to mandatory. Anyway, so I think there's a question of what's mandatory, what's permissive. I would also say, I wonder if there's other permissive things you want to put in the work plan. And I would include the accommodation quarterly, whatever. There's a few of those things I think we want to just put in there. It's permissive, I believe. Like, I don't think we're.
No, it's in the chart.
It's mandatory.
But I don't know if there's a frequency with which we're expected to do it.
It just says that a procedure has to be.
Correct. Yeah, but we could, anyway.
Yeah.
So there might be a few other items, and to your point, like the ad hoc analysis of the SCU morass, or whatever you want to call it. But yeah, because this is all the mandatory things, but there might be some other permissive things you might also want to add.
Director?
Yeah, if I may, real quick, Chair, just to the board member point, board member Blackaby, this was a weird one. In reviewing both of those documents, the charter and the standard rules, it kind of goes both ways. So the charter says the Police Accountability Board has the following powers and duties in section 3, and then 3A2 discusses the to review and recommend for City Council approval of all agreements, letters, memorandum of understanding. What it says in the standing rules is that my reading is that if you do engage in that work of doing the mutual aid agreements, section K is telling you that you shall constitute a mutual aid subcommittee no later than the first meeting in February. So it's not, my reading is not that it's mandatory to do the mutual aid agreements review. If you do it, if you engage in that work as part of your work plan, you shall, under your standard rules, constitute the mutual aid subcommittee no later than the first meeting of February.
So we discussed too, but as we plan along.
Could I ask that at our next meeting, we agendize the retreat
Love it.
so that we get something on the calendar?
Sounds like.
One of the things just for consideration in the work plan would be whether you want to do just somehow schedule, call it twice a year, public meetings or something, again, just community sessions. But because I'm just thinking from the work plan perspective, just making sure all of these building blocks are laid out. So you've got all of your mandatory requirements. And then some of the things you just want to do because they're initiatives of the board. You might put combinations, you might put community meetings, from a PR perspective and just to share the good work that the board is doing.
Great. Outreach is
Yeah.
part of what we have to do. Anything else? Any other comments on this? All right, Well, I'm gonna keep this moving forward here, if everyone's okay with that. And that will take us to 10D, that starts real. Discussion and action on relocating PAB regular meetings to ODPA's new office and meeting space at 1900 Addison Street, third floor, Berkeley, California, with alternative location being the North Berkeley Senior Center. Okay, we got 5 minutes on this one. Yeah, please, right.
I'll give you
Go ahead.
2 minutes. 2 minutes. So we have as I mentioned, formally started our first stage. It's getting the staff in there. There are still lingering things that we need to do before we can open it up to the public. We do anticipate that they'll be ready by next board meeting, which is December 11th. So we are ready to receive the board at those meetings. We also have the opportunity between here and there for board members to go in and stop in and look at the space. And we also do anticipate opening it up to the public ahead, at least from the office perspective, ahead of that December 11th meeting. If for whatever reason, as a contingency plan, something were to happen outside of our control, we would still have this room reserved in the North Berkeley Senior Center. But we're asking the board if they would consider again to return to that space. Well, actually change, it's not returning, but going to that space because it was contemplated to have the board meetings there, and the board, the city council also provided the funding, the additional funding for that space with consideration of board meetings and also other board and commission meetings taking place in that space. So the ask or request is for the board to pass a motion to have the meeting starting December 11th at that space. At the very least, the December 11th meeting, check it out, see how it works, and then hopefully we can stay there as contemplated.
Let's talk about it.
George, if you put in a little more context where other committee meetings are held and how this would compare to those.
Other board meetings or for the PAB or for the other commissions?
Not necessarily the PAB, I mean the general meetings that follow a similar format to ours, that are open to the public, that are meeting on a regular basis, the many commissions of Berkeley. I know several that meet here at the senior center. Do others meet at locations similar to this one in downtown Berkeley?
They meet in different locations throughout the city. In 1947, there's a basement that sometimes holds some of these board and commission meetings. We have held our meetings there. In other of the recreational centers around the city, we have also explored those locations as well, South Berkeley, but also the other recreational centers. So there's essentially the city has designated certain areas in locations for use for these boards and commissions.
Just speak, I was on the Commission on the Status of Women, and we always met here. And the Police Review Commission met at the other senior center.
The Planning Commission meets here.
You meet everywhere.
You meet everywhere.
So as I understand it, and we had this discussion before, it's much more efficient for staff to have these meetings in your office. Is that correct? Because you have to schlep all the stuff here, set it up, take it back. So I'm very supportive of that. I think there was some safety concern at the last location. I am sensitive to that, but I also feel like it's important that we are recognizing how much work this is for staff. So I would approve moving to the new location, at least for the December, which I won't be at. But give it a try. I think we owe it to staff to give it a try. That would be my 2 cents on that.
And I'm just gonna jump in on that 2.6, and also the BPD, we're right across the street from the police department.
Okay,
So
so
we don't,
no one's gonna mess with
well,
that.
we don't wanna be like, we're so scared, we're scared of being across the street from the police department. It's not a good look for anybody. So I do want the concerns about safety to be addressed, so let's talk about them. If there is an issue, beyond the walking, to the doors and to your cars and anything like that, please let me know. Of course, I'll be there, to walk you guys to, your doors.
Is there a parking lot attached to it?
There is, and we have about a week and a half worth of data so far being in that space. In after hours, the lot is relatively empty, and there's a parking lot, also a parking garage right across the street from that space. So we do anticipate there will be some space for board members in that lot.
Is the front door locked?
They are installing, it is locked, they are installing an intercom system, and we'll also have a security guard as well there.
I'm asking from the perspective of public attendance, is the front door will be locked?
Right, so I was mentioning the security guard will be open, manning the door, so because it's not a city-owned building, we don't have the same setup where in the building you are now, you have the monitors, the folks at the front desk. The city has regulations that don't allow those folks to be at non-city buildings, so we have to use the security system, security guard system. But yes, there'll be access available for the members of the community there. Somebody will be monitoring the door.
Right, let's second with the vice chair here. How we feeling? I just want to take a temperature.
To clarify, we are, the motion is for just next meeting.
I believe, director wants us to give it a try on December 11th. Is that correct?
I think that'll be a fair, approach to this.
Just to clarify the motion, sorry, by the Vice Chair Wilson, was that the motion just for the next meeting, or were you?
Sure, it's not, my motion is to just move there, but I think, yes, we are all can agree to try it one time.
That's a second by Board Member Moses. Okay, proceed by the roll call vote. Board Member Blackaby,
Yes.
Board Member Calavita,
Yes.
Board Member Cayetano,
Yes.
Board Member Leftwich,
Yes.
Chair Moore,
Yes.
Board Member Moses,
Yes.
Vice Chair Wilson,
Yes.
and Board Member Williams.
Yes.
The motion carries.
And that'll take us to agenda item number 11, public comment.
Thank you. I'll start with those physically present before moving on to our virtually present speakers. Seeing no physically present members of the public at this time, I'll now proceed to our virtual attendees. At this time, are there any virtual attendees that would like to provide public comment? Again, use the raise hand icon or press *9. Chair, at this time, there are no additional speakers.
Which takes us to agenda item number 12, closed session.